Have you ever found yourself saying yes to something when, every single part of you is just screaming no? You are definitely not alone. But what if I told you this isn't some failure of willpower? What if it's actually a deep-seated survival instinct that's hardwired right into your brain? Okay, let's get into it.
Man, this one really hits home, doesn't it? Every single time you reluctantly say yes, you're making a trade. You're basically voting against your own time, your own energy, your own priorities. But if the cost is that high, and the choice seems so simple, well, that brings up a really important question.
Seriously, why does this tiny two-letter word get stuck in our throats? The answer isn't that we're rude or unhelpful. Nah, it's actually buried deep inside our own psychology and biology. It's a conditioned response we've been practicing our entire lives. Right, so we've got to stop thinking of this as a conscious choice and start seeing it for what it really is, a reflex. It's this deeply ingrained habit that gets triggered by this whole cocktail of emotions and social programming, and it just pushes us towards saying yes before we've even had a chance to think. And here's the thing. These drivers you see here, they don't just work in isolation. They pile on top of each other. We are social creatures, And that fear of being seen as selfish or difficult, it can feel like a genuine threat. So we say yes just to avoid the awkwardness of a confrontation, or that sting of guilt, or the fear of messing up a relationship. Just think back to when you were a kid for a second. The word no was like a giant stop sign. It meant you couldn't have more candy, you couldn't stay up late, you couldn't go play. It was the ultimate fun killer. So we learned really early on to connect no with disappointment and negativity. And that connection is super sticky. It stays with us.
Now, this childhood conditioning doesn't just shape our feelings. It literally builds pathways in our brain. We're not just talking about emotions anymore. This is about physiology. Our trouble with saying no is rooted in the way our nervous system is wired for plain and simple survival.
Okay, so this is the key mechanism right here. Our brain is basically a pattern matching machine. That's what it does all day long. It learns to connect our actions with certain outcomes. So if doing something leads to a reward, like say praise or acceptance, we're wired to do it again. But if it leads to punishment, like disapproval or a fight, we learn to avoid it like the plague.
And this whole process starts way back in childhood, when our survival literally depends on our connection to the grown-ups around us. Pleasing them means safety, it means care. So when saying no risks disappointing them, our brain doesn't just see it as a social oopsie, it flags it as a potential threat to our survival. You know that guilty feeling you get? That's just an outdated alarm system going off.
I absolutely love this quote from Dr. Gabor Mate because he just reframes guilt perfectly. It was a mechanism that protected you as a kid by keeping you in line. But the thing is, it hasn't updated its software since then. It doesn't get that you're a capable adult now who doesn't need that same level of protection. It's basically a friend who means well, but just gives you terrible advice. All right, so we've seen why we do it. Now let's get real about the price we pay for this yes reflex. Because every single time we reluctantly agree to something, there is a huge and often totally invisible cost. This idea, which comes from James Clear, is a total game changer. Think about it. When you say no to a single request, that's it. That's the only door you're closing. But when you say yes, you are implicitly saying no to everything else you could have done with that time and energy. You're saying no to your own projects, to time with your family, to just getting some rest. Saying yes feels so easy in the moment, doesn't it? But it's kind of like taking out a loan on your future time. You are committing the future version of you to pay it back, often with interest in the form of stress and exhaustion. A no, on the other hand, is like a time credit. It keeps all your future options open. And this is what that time debt can really look like. When we're chronic people pleasers, a massive chunk of our time just gets devoured by other people's agendas. So what's left for our own goals, for our own well-being? A lot of the time, it's just the scraps. So the big question is, how do we start taking that time back?
And that brings us to the most important part, the practical, science-backed strategies. It's not just about trying to find the courage to say the word no. It's about having the right tools in your pocket to do it effectively and, just as importantly, respectfully. Okay, so these 3 strategies are your new toolkit. Research actually shows that saying I don't instead of I can't frames your decision as an empowered choice, not some limitation you have. Referencing a commitment takes the personal sting out of the no. And making a counteroffer, that shows you still want to help, but on your own terms.
Let me show you how that first strategy works. This categorical no is so powerful because it's not about this one specific request. It's about a rule you already have. You're not rejecting the person, you're just following your policy. It makes your no feel like an objective fact, which is way harder to argue with.
And here's another incredibly useful tool, the counter-offer. It's just a brilliant way to be helpful without becoming a doormat. You're still contributing, you're showing you care about their success, but you're doing it in a way that works for you. You protect your own time, and you preserve the relationship. It's a win-win.
This right here, this is probably the most critical mindset shift you can make. The fear of saying no is almost always tied to that fear of social rejection. But if you can separate the person from the task, you can say no with confidence and with compassion, because you know you're just turning down a request, not the entire relationship.
And I want to leave you with this powerful thought from Warren Buffett. It just completely flips the script. Saying no isn't a sign that you're unhelpful. It's a strategic tool for focus and for high achievement. So the real question I want to leave you with is this. What are you saying yes to right now that is keeping you from being truly successful?